Christian parenting.
Where can we start sowing those little seeds of truth when they're believing that it's not good that they're a boy or they don't want to grow up to be a man?
You know, once upon a time has a lot more impact on the heart than you must do X, Y, and Z. So I recommend Story.
Hey, welcome back, Call to Love families, to another episode of the Call to Love podcast. Each week, I am so honored and grateful to be able to bring you content that encourages you in the practical, the clinical, and always, most importantly, the biblical aspects of the adoption and the foster care callings. Today, we are kicking off our fall content, and I am so excited to be able to welcome my friend back to the show, Molly DeFrank. She is a mom, an author, and she just has an incredible ministry encouraging us in our parenting. Her latest project is all about encouraging us to instill character and godly values into the next generation of men. And friends, as foster and adoptive parents, this is an incredible challenge and there's a lot of weight to it. But as Molly's going to share with us, the Lord has so much to say on this topic. And so, Molly, welcome. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks so much for having me, Summer. It's so good to be talking to you. It's always great to connect.
Yes, I love it. And I'm so excited that we get to talk about this specifically. I'm in the throes of launching an adult out into this world, an adult man, still my man child in my eyes. And then I have another one coming along. And so this is such an important topic right now. And I was reading through just a little bit about the message of the book. And I want to start here. And where it says that boys are surrounded by accusations that their very existence is toxic and told that their biological makeup is a problem. And so there's so much to that. There's attack on our men, there's attack on our boys. And for those of us who are fostering or have adopted children who have heard other messages in their lives, we've got a big job ahead of us. And so before we kick off with all of that, tell us just a little bit about your family and what adoption and foster care has meant to you, and then we'll dive into the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a mom of 6 kids. I have 4 biological kids, and then 2 came into our family through foster care and adoption. And I've got 3 boys and 3 girls. And we live in California. We've had several teenagers come and go in our house through foster care as well, which is, I got a special place in my heart for those teens. That's probably like my favorite place to parent, to be honest. So I say that now. I have 2 teenagers right now. I'm on my way to my 3rd teenager. So, but God's been gracious breaking me in pretty softly with those teens. It's been pretty sweet with a couple moments of chaos, but yeah, I'm really grateful for the family God has given me. It's a lot of, high highs and low lows, as most parents know, especially with this foster adoption journey. There are things I think you understand and learn about yourself and about the character and the heart of God that you wouldn't have known without it. So I'm really grateful for that. And as it pertains to this book, Mothering Boys, I'm just excited to share what I've learned, both in the research and in God's word, and then also here in the front lines of the home and parenting, and really just the opportunity that moms have to change generations and to leave this legacy and to build the hearts and minds of our sons. So whether they are foster kids, adoptive kids, or biological kids, they all can just benefit so much with a little intentionality. And that's what the book is. It's just a little bit of intentionality and encouragement for moms.
I love that. And you're right. We do have a big job ahead of us, but we don't have to just cram it all in a short amount of time. And I'm grateful for the influence that we do have as mothers. And there's a unique relationship with moms and their boys. And it's something that I just absolutely have treasured. Even as my boys have gotten older, I feel like I've kind of survived some of those, the initial teenage years, and now we're into the early adulthood. And it's been really neat to see that and just watching him become a man, but yet still holding on to those ties of when they were little. And so let's just begin by having you share with us a little bit about, maybe just those little moments that we can begin to just start teach our boys and to pour truth into them about who they are according to what Scripture says, which is totally contrary to the world, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the most critical piece here for our boys. The thing that really struck me and part of my inspiration behind writing this book was noticing how kids are growing up differently today. They're spending so much time on digital media, and then seeing all this research come out that boys are falling behind even more than girls in so many areas. Boys are 2.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled from school. Um, 2/3 of young men say no one really knows me. They have this epidemic of loneliness. They're disconnected. They're sad. They're less likely to be employed. They're less likely to earn a college degree, a master's degree. In fact, the numbers are bigger. The gaps are bigger than they were in the 70s when Title IX was passed. But the other way around, women used to be way behind. Now it's men that are falling behind. So we're looking at this
Mm,
going, gosh, what does this mean for our future? And how did we get here? And at the same time, I noticed being a Christian, a believer, just how impactful a parent, a faithful parent, how impactful that is on the hearts of a young child growing up. Um, George Barna had a study out that said a child's worldview is pretty much formed by the time he's 13 years old.
mm,
So that means that the work that parents are doing in those tiny years where they feel really chaotic and stressful, and you're running carpool and you're wiping bottoms and cleaning bathrooms and doing laundry ad nauseum, you're actually having an incredible amount of impact if we can fix our eyes not on what is seen, not on like the dishes and the laundry, but if we can go a little under the surface and look at what's unseen, we'll see this treasure trove and this massive opportunity. So, sorry, that was a very roundabout way to get to your question,
I love it.
which is
I
what
love it.
can we do? And the book is really 8 things. I kind of condensed it into like 8 categories of things that our boys need from us before they turn 10, to really build them up and form that worldview. And the first was really just belonging. The first section is showing our boys that they have a place in our family, they have a place in this world, no matter what kind of a knucklehead they were at school, or how big they blew it, or whatever they do, they have a place in our family where they are fully known and fully loved, and they can always come back to mom. And I really wanted to start there with the book. That's why that's the first thing. But even before I get to that, just to encourage moms not to kind of view these things as this like exhaustive list of like, you have to do these things or you're behind,
Yeah.
but just that we get to rest fully in what Christ has done for us. He did everything. He finished. It is finished with Jesus. And so just remembering that our best parenting is really done resting in Christ. And that's just the foundation of a godly mom is really the foundation for raising great kids. And so if we can parent out of that rest, and then the rest is just kind of gravy. The rest of the book are just ideas for redeeming the chaotic moments and kind of how to be a little intentional. So that's really where
I
where
love
I come from.
that. That's so, so sweet. Yes. No, I love that. And honestly, it's one of those things where I really wish I understood that concept as a young mom, and especially as kind of unexpectedly being a boy mom. I'd always been there's a lot of girls on my side of the family, and so I just always assumed that I would have girls, and then all of a sudden I'm a boy mom, and I love it, but I have no clue what to do with these little climbers and the mud and all the things that comes with boys, and it really threw me for a loop, and I just wish that I could have understood back then that concept of just resting in my parenting. So I love that you start with that. I love that you lead with that. And that's something that even ministers to my heart now because my parenting journey is not over. I think it would be helpful to Molly, and I don't know how much you put into the book, but I'm sure you have a good understanding where you can answer this question of just the uniqueness of the boy brain and how important that is for us to understand that because as we're going to talk about building connection and cultivating character and all of that, but let's talk about just really a fundamental understanding of how God designed our boys and the way that they think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're a mom to boys, I'm sure you've probably noticed and girls that they're not wired the same. There are some major differences. And especially if those boys, and there's a lot of latitude here. I was talking to another mom um who has a son who's not like doesn't fall into the traditional boy categories. He's not rough and tumble. Um, but a lot of moms will like me, you're looking at your boys and you're going, oh my gosh, these kids, they gotta be outside, they gotta be moving. I homeschooled my kids for like a year. And my son was in second grade at the time. And I remember just being so frustrated, like, why can't you just like look at the problem we're doing? I don't understand.
Right.
And I even consulted a therapist and he was like, so how long can he focus before he can't? And I was like, probably 6 or 7 minutes. And he's like, well, that's what he has to give you right now. And I'm like, I don't like that answer. That's not
right?
very helpful, but he was right. And so we're just kind of like working with what we have. But yeah, if you're parenting boys, you might notice they have to be moving constantly. Um, a lot of teachers will even tell you, gosh, the girls can sit just fine in kindergarten, but the boys kind of struggle. They need to move around more. Oftentimes they're more interested in things than in people. So that's why we need to work a little harder to help them hone those relationships, giving them those skills. So, and also boys are disparately impacted by this technology.
Mm,
Digital entertainment often is making our boys lonelier because they're not developing the skills that human beings need to relate to one another. So,
yeah,
the skills that boys have typically learned playing outside, you watch the movie The Sandlot, and that's how boys used to play. And now, sometimes parents will just hand them a tablet or they'll let them game during their free time. And what's the opportunity cost? They're not learning the art of back and forth, working out problems, even getting in arguments. Um, there are just so many things they're not getting if they're spending that free time on devices, and it's really harming our boys. So that's
yeah.
what I kind of delve into is, well, what can we do given the landscape in our culture, given how our boys are wired a little differently? They're a little less likely to be super relational, and that's the beauty is moms tend to be more relational than dads a lot of the time. Like we bring a little more warmth, a little more connectivity a lot of the time. And so these are unique gifts that we can give our boys if we just spend a little extra time, think a little bit. Even family dinners. I have one chapter under belonging and relationship about the power of family dinners. And I
Yeah.
think we moms really underestimate what we're accomplishing just by getting food on the table and putting everyone around the table. It doesn't even need to be gourmet. It could be pick up a pizza at Costco or a bag of rotisserie chicken and a salad or whatever. But there was this Harvard therapist that said, if more families took advantage of the benefits of regular family dinners, I would be out of a job because what I
Wow.
do in my office, most of that gets accomplished over the dinner table. And despite that, 60% of families don't take advantage of family dinners. So just really simple things like that. A lot of it has to do with building up a biblical worldview in our boys. They have culture. There are so many voices right now speaking in to form their hearts and minds. And what does it mean to be a boy? And what does it mean to be a girl? And what is gender? How does that impact you? And we have this opportunity to show our boys like what God says about masculinity and what God says
Yeah.
is beautiful about these gifts that we have in masculinity and femininity. And it's not a curse, and it's actually really beneficial to society. So we have this opportunity to build them up.
No, that's so good. And I love that you talk about the importance of that belonging related to connection because honestly, our boys aren't going to take in the messages that we so desperately want to pour into them if there's not that point of connection, which leads to trust. And we talk about that a lot on the show is, building trust is a huge part of, creating that felt safety. And so I love that you talk about the simplicity of meals and then also just that unique wiring of the brain. Sometimes us mamas have to dive into boy world a little bit. And I'm definitely in that as well, where they're sharing things with me about lifting weights and, eating high protein. And because I've got teen boys right now. And so, or, the latest YouTuber that's showing them how to, do this or do that, or even just like a certain video game that they're interested in. And I'm just like, it is everything I can do because I know that in order for him to receive what I want to pour into him, he needs to see me receiving what he's excited about. Right. And so I think that's a huge part of just, building connection. Let's talk a little bit more about just some of the simple ways that we can look for opportunities in our day to create that meaningful connection with our boys so that we have those opportunities both for them to feel like they belong, like they feel heard, and then for us to be able to pour in those little nuggets of what we know God's truth to be.
Yeah, that is so good what you said about that relationship and that connection. That really is the foundation for raising these boys who are receptive to what we're trying to teach them. Um,
Yeah.
I heard a great little nugget a while ago. It was rules without relationship lead to rebellion. And it is so true.
Yeah.
But this is also particularly important, I'm thinking, for foster and adoptive moms, because a lot of times these boys, I mean, by definition, if they're coming from that trauma background, you're dealing with either absentee fathers, or abusive or neglectful fathers. So these are kids who often have not had a good example of positive masculinity. So they might
Yeah.
be growing to even dislike their own masculinity or to try to emulate these negative things they've seen. And I know we've had a lot of kids come in and out of our home, but we've seen all of that with the boys
Yeah.
that we've had. So yeah, it's really important. And over time, as we build these relationships with our sons, they start to want, they desire, well, gosh, I want this this worldview, this warmth, this love, like they want to know more about it. So it's
Yeah.
a really beautiful thing. And to get to the question, which is the simple things we can do to really build that connection. And they're so simple. And this is, I love encouraging moms with this because I'm not a type A mom. I'm kind of I'm a high capacity, but like fly by the seat of your pants kind of mom. Like I look at my calendar when I wake up for the day. Like I'm not planning far ahead, but I can get a lot done in a day. So I hope this encourages you that you don't need to plan this like weeks ahead of time, but couple ways that I really crank up the intentionality with my kids is, a quick 5-minute walk around the block. If you got 5 minutes before you got to leave the house or before you got to start making dinner, grab that one kid. And I know it sounds really hard, and I gotta push through that maybe speed bump in my desire to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
But grab the hardest kid at the moment and really take them on a 5-minute walk. And you can even be quiet for a few minutes, but after a few, you're going to listen and watch what pours out of their heart. And if they're not initiating, they're not leading, start sharing, like, gosh, what am I learning in my Bible? How is that convicting my heart? Like, what is God showing me? And humility plus time with our kids is just a powerful transformative
That's
tool. So
great.
yeah, quick walk around the
Yeah.
block. Sometimes I have one son who really enjoyed cooking when he was small. And so if I was willing to kind of pull him in with me when I was making something, and full disclosure, I don't always like doing this. I like to get my stuff done and check my boxes. But if we're willing to be a little intentional and give up that maybe efficiency for just like one of the meals,
Mhm.
we'll really plant these seeds that are just gonna grow later on. Um, yeah, those are a few that I love. Even read aloud time. It doesn't matter how old your kids are. If I've got a kid going in high school who I suggested, I'll read your school book with you. That sounds fun. He's super into it. And then we have, a whole new thing to talk about that's kind of just ours. So, kind of going back to what you said about really getting in the weeds on what they're into, even if you're not into protein or, creatine or weightlifting or whatever. It's like
Right.
asking him a couple questions and getting into it. I got one young son right now who's really into Pokemon. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I could name 3 Pokemon, but I want to hear about them because you like it. So tell me what you got. So yeah, all of that.
Hey families, Summer here. Sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to make sure that you have subscribed. By subscribing to the Call to Love podcast, that means you will get notified with every new episode each week, and it helps me to know that you are here and a part of the Call to Love community. You can also leave my podcast a review and rate it, which helps others to find the show. This podcast is growing thanks to you, and we hope to continue reaching families who are looking for resources as they live out their own call to love. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the conversation. That's so sweet. I love that. Yeah, and I like that you say pushing past because the way I function, and especially the busy season, I feel like we are in the busiest season of life that we've ever been in terms of just parenting and life and career and all the things. And so I'm like, efficiency is like my best friend. I love it. And so I really default to that, and sometimes at the cost of relationship. And so I have to push past that and look at what matters more, and also try to discipline our family of, hey, planning ahead as best as I can on this night. Everybody's around the dinner table because I know we're here, here, and here. And we try to be present at all of the activities so that we're not all separated. But doing the best that we can to grab those little moments. I love you talking about 5-minute walks. And a lot of times, what we talk about here on this show, specifically that bilateral movement of walking, helps the brain to settle down if we are escalated in any kind of way. And so then our kids might be more, our boys specifically, more prone to open up. Or if you're tossing a ball, or if you're just out there shooting the basketball, back and forth in the driveway a few times before dinner. I love that. Just really practical examples of that. And we talk a lot, obviously, of just the effects on trauma, and specifically specifically our boys, and just how devastating that is for them to come to us having not experienced the full nurture and guidance of caregiving that we would have wanted for them. So, for that audience that we're talking to today, do you have some practical suggestions just with the kiddos that have been in and out of your homes for ways that they can connect, especially when our kids don't trust and they're resistant?
Oh, absolutely. I think my biggest bit of encouragement, and I have to preach this to my own heart all the time, is just I heard this from Sally Clarkson: worry less, trust God more. She said,
Mm,
if she, looking back on her early parenting, what does she wish she did differently? And she said, I wish I spent less time worrying and more time trusting God. And all of that to say, just stay the course. I think, I talked a little bit earlier about how um, our boys and our kids are just really conditioned with their digital entertainment for this instant gratification. But you know what? We are
yeah.
too. And we get every question answered like that, chat gpt, find me a recipe with these three ingredients, or all of these things. And technology can be a great partner in this life, but it if we're not careful, will allow it to condition us to expect those results from our parenting. And then when it doesn't happen, we tell ourselves this isn't working. Well, how do you know it's not working? It hasn't had an opportunity to work. You look at when you plant seeds in your garden, it takes time, and the seasons need to change. There needs to be a lot of water and a lot of plucking weeds, and you don't even see anything happening because it's under the dirt. But there's, that seed is opening up and it's getting comfy and it's putting down roots. And there is a long season where the seeds you planted and watered and the cultivating work that you're doing is accomplishing something. It's just you can't see it. So my encouragement is, if you're listening to this, I know you're the kind of parent who's seeking out resources to connect with those kids that need it the most. And so I know you have the tools in your box, and I know what it's like to use all the tools and to still feel like you're banging your head against a wall, because I feel like that a lot. But this is my encouragement to you: is keep doing it anyway. When you keep seeing,
Mm,
you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole, you're like, I'm doing this connective thing, and then 20 minutes later, that wily kid has just bopped someone else on the head, or is throwing the kind of fit, or I can't leave him with anyone because he screams, or whatever it is. Like, just stay the course. Like, the work you're doing day in and day out is working. And at the end of the day, I mean, we are not responsible for making sure that our boys turn out believers working in ministry, or very
yeah.
successful business people who have a heart for God. That's above our pay grade. What we are
Right.
called to do is love. There's a little, for your little podcast, I love that one. Tie that into your title there. What we're called to do is to be faithful to the calling God has given us. So we do the planting and the watering and the tilling, and we trust God. He's the only one that can
Yeah.
really make that seed plant those roots and do its thing. So just
That's right.
trusting and resting in God's sovereignty, and really drawing a circle around what our responsibility is. And that's just being faithful to our calling. So enjoy your faithfulness and celebrate that along the way, but just keep using those tools, and praise God that he's called you to this work, because it's hard.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good word, Molly. I love that and how freeing that is for us because we carry so much as we're trying desperately to love and connect with these kiddos that the Lord has placed in our lives and our homes and in our hearts. And I want to go back to something that we talked about early on in the episode and just give you an opportunity to speak into, like we've said, these kiddos who come into our care, who have had previous experience, maybe have had lies that have really taken root in their hearts and in their minds about who they are, about the fact that being a boy is not good, or that they don't want to be like the other boys or men in their lives because they were hurt by them. What are some gentle ways that we can rebuke those lies, to begin to sow those little seeds of truth in ways that are not combative, they're not, coming from a place of judgment or trying to just completely overhaul the lies that are established in their minds? Where can we start sowing those little seeds of truth when they're believing that it's not good that they're a boy or they don't want to grow up to be a man?
Yeah, so good. um Once upon a time has a lot more impact on the heart than you must do X, Y, and Z. So I recommend story a lot of the time. We had one kiddo in our care, a little boy, who would just lie nonstop about even things that didn't really matter. And you're like, that doesn't even help you. Like, why are you lying about that,
Yeah,
man? Um,
right.
but um, story is so powerful, and it really does shape the heart. Even just tell, and we would tell that little boy, um, the boy who cried wolf, all the time, and just stories where they're not the main character, but they get to see natural consequences of sin. That's really helpful. And going back to the Bible, I have um several examples in the book of, you can identify these traits in your sons, that it can be positive or negative, and they're all wired a little differently. But you look at someone like David, who was really bold, um, and that can be great, but can also be really scary. You think about this, when he was maybe 14 when he took on Goliath, and he's like, I'll do it, I'll fight this giant that all of these armies were afraid to fight, and he goes for it in the name of the Lord. And I was rereading that story when I was mentioning this in the book, and I'm like, man, there's no mention of David's mom, how she felt about David's
Right.
excitement and boldness. But I would imagine she's like, are you kidding me, David? I'm sure he was the one jumping off the top of the couch or the roof into the pool or whatever. um but we get to channel our sons' strengths and weaknesses into good lanes for them to run in. So boldness, or it could be impulsivity, or it could be boldness and zeal for God. And so using story like, oh, David, look at what he did. And then look at what David said right before he took on Goliath. He wasn't like, look at me go, I'm going to be awesome. He's like, this is for the glory of God. Um, and he used that boldness for God. And you look at all of these biblical examples of even Paul, who said, yeah, I'm taking on this trade because I don't want to be a burden to the people around me. So I'm making these tents, and I'm preaching the gospel. And so using that, showing this example, pointing out like, oh yeah, he worked really hard because he wanted to be self-sufficient. He wanted to provide. Or even Boaz, who had all of this wealth, and he shared it with people who were less fortunate. So I think we could talk all day about this. There's so many powerful examples in the Bible. Moses, you think about how Moses lost his temper, and he would just get angry, and the consequences for that.
Yeah.
Or when he balked when God called him into leadership, he's like, "What? Who am I?" It's like, well, literally, God Himself is calling you. So,
Right.
teaching our boys to be brave, and teaching them to obey, and teaching them to respect authority. But all of these lessons do come out of retelling these stories. And it's not just in the Bible. Like, watch a Marvel movie with your kids and ask them great qualities they noticed in some of these heroes, and point them out and highlight them, and call attention to them. And even another really, well, maybe I'll end with this one, but I think a really powerful way to do this is call attention to your husband, and how he provides for your family, how he protects, how he nurtures and
Yeah.
loves. Um,
That's great.
those things are really powerful because your son gets to see that on display, in the house every day. So those are just a couple of ideas.
I think that's so good. And I love, we talk about this too a lot on the show, this concept of more is caught than taught. And so the more we can model for our kids, because they are watching, and especially those kids who have come from places of dysfunction, they don't know what to do with our healthy relationships and healthy communication and structure in our homes. And so it throws them aback, but they are watching.
Yeah.
And we've had that experience as well. So I love that, just thinking through and modeling, and then just ways to integrate those biblical truths and lessons and instilling that character in them. That's so, so encouraging. Molly, I want to, as you were talking about all of this, it just really hit me that I really want to encourage our moms in the practical ways that we can create safe spaces for our boys to fail,
Mm.
because I think they need so much for their mamas to hear them tell them how big their muscles are and how proud they are that they built that big sandcastle, or that they could climb that mountain of dirt and go down it in their bikes, or whatever it is. But the times that they don't quite get it right, and especially for our kiddos who come from those places of chaos and dysfunction, who don't even know what right looks like, how can we as moms practically love and connect with them by creating a safe space for them to fail?
Mm. That is so good. Um, and I appreciate that acknowledgement, because we all blow it all the time.
Yeah.
But when they're met with unconditional love, when they do fail, that's the opportunity we have to reflect the good character and love of God, which is that's how he treats us and that's how he sees us. So, yeah, I think that it just goes back to showing them that they always have a place. Um showing them I blow it too sometimes and I love you no matter what. There's never anything you can do or say that would make me not love you or make me love you any less. My love for you is always the same. Did you know it never changes? No matter what you do or say, I love you the same when you're getting straight A's and you're doing great. And I love you the same when you're blowing it and I got a call from the principal. And that's hard. And sometimes my husband and I, like, we have to huddle sometimes because sometimes I will get a call from the principal and I'm kind of mad. We had one little boy who, my kids got dropped off every day on time to school last year. And parent teacher conference rolls around and I got this one little boy had 20 tardies. And I'm like,
Oh,
I'm sorry. What? And
yeah.
so I'm like talking to the teacher and she's like, yeah, he comes in like late and I think he stops to get breakfast. We live in California. The kids open up the cafeteria to free breakfast every morning. Like everyone can get it. Well, my kids eat breakfast at home and the breakfast they serve is like Fruit Loops. Like you don't need that.
Right.
You had eggs and fruit at home. You don't need to go like binge on gross whatever. Anyway,
Right.
so I find out this kid's taking a leisurely second breakfast. And oh
Hmm.
man, I was mad. I was so,
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Anyway, but sometimes I do need to huddle with my husband and be like, man, I'm about to come in guns blazing.
Yeah.
But we've had to do this for each other. Like, listen, we're going to stay calm in this. We're going to let the consequence speak for itself, but we're going to lead with, and my husband's really good at this. And he did this for a different
Yeah.
disciplinary issue, let out with, hey, we love you no matter what. There's nothing you can do. Make us love you any less. Okay. You need to tell us what happened and why there's that like weird science experiment in the bathroom. Like, go ahead, explain that, please. So, yeah, I think it's just, and sometimes, honestly, we're saying those words to remind ourselves and to coach our hearts just as much as we are to coach their hearts. And that's okay if that's where you are. This foster adopt world is weird because a lot of and I'm so grateful for your podcast because there's so much shame in the parts of your heart that you see as a mom where you're like,
Mm.
I shouldn't feel like this about my own kid. Like, this is not good. And this is yucky and rotten. And like, I have
Yes.
yuck feelings right now and I don't want to feel like that.
Yes.
But you know what? That's so beautiful because I would not know the depths of God's love for me and his forgiveness for me without this wild ride. So
Amen.
take joy in that we get to know God more and we get to know the heart of God more and we get to see how vast his love and forgiveness and grace is for us. And then we get to extend that to these kids. So, you know what? If
Okay.
you're feeling broken and like you're barely scraping by, welcome to the club. You're not alone. And, God loves you. He loves you and he's there for you. There's no feeling you can have that's too yucky for him. So don't feel ashamed. He wiped that away for you.
Oh, that's so good, Molly. Thank you for sharing that. And that just ministers to my heart even today and in the midst of all the things. So I'm so grateful for you. And friends, I got to give a plug too, because the first time I ever met Molly, we talked about her first book, which was The Digital Detox. And that is like a whole other episode that we could go into and just talking about the benefits of removing those screens and really prioritizing connecting in person, face to face, and other activities. So I want to make sure that our listeners can connect with, follow you more, and access all of your resources. So tell them how they can do that.
Absolutely. You can find me on my website, mollydefrank.com, or you can find me on Instagram. I love connecting with people and sharing tips and ideas and parenting and sometimes funny stories. Molly DeFrank. And I think I'm on Facebook, but I'm not that as active there. So find me on Instagram or my website. And I hope you grab a copy of the book. You can find it anywhere books are sold. It's called Mothering Boys, 8 Things Your Son Needs from You Before He Turns 10. And yeah, I hope you love it.
That's so fantastic. Okay, friends, I put all of those in today's show notes. And so you'll be able to access those easily and quickly. And if you have follow up questions or thoughts after listening to today's conversations, there's also an email in there that you can send me a direct message and I would love to respond that. It is my honor to get to dialogue back and forth with you as a Call to Love family. And so just know that that is there for you to be able to access and communicate further as well. Molly, I'm so grateful for you. Please come back. Let's chat some more. You are a wealth of wisdom, and I'm just so grateful for all the work that God has you doing.
Oh, thanks, Summer. I loved being with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Called to Love today. I love to hear from listeners, and so I would love to connect with you to hear your stories and answer your questions right here on the show. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, send me a direct message, or send me an email at the link in today's show notes. I pray you have been encouraged by today's episode to walk in faith and continue to embrace your own call to love. Until next time, blessings, sweet friends.